Welcome back to Power and Politics. The attacks on September 11th, 2001 reshaped security technology and the fight to protect America's interests, both here at home and around the world. Giving us his expertise on the topic is Sal Lifrieri, the president of PCC Secure, a security consulting firm. Sal, as you reflect on the last 24 years, from the security aspect, what are you thinking about this week?
So I think one of the advantages that, out of the tragedy came some good. And I think that was the acceleration of the use of new and emerging technologies that are coming out that are giving greater capability for not only to be able to respond to situations, but to also not necessarily predict, but to get in front of things so that you have an early warning system. I think the advent of that is something that is great. It's something that is every day is growing, and we're seeing that evolve even with the use of AI. So we have that melding of AI capabilities that has progressed to where it is today, to being able to deploy that in with security devices and the new technologies coming out. So I'm really excited about a lot of things that are going to be coming out, but probably within the next 6 months to a year.
You mentioned AI. What are you most excited about when it comes to how AI, artificial intelligence, will play a role in improving security moving forward?
So the utilization of AI into the security realm and the technology for security, things along the lines of the ability to create analytics right at the camera level. Originally there were no analytics. You weren't able to identify things ahead of time. Something as simple as a backpack that may be left. And over the course of time, we now have the capability from the camera side of it. So it's at the end, right? At the end of the line, you have the camera being able to run an analytic that identifies what's in its field of view. And depending on how it's programmed, it's how long was that package left there. And you could predetermine it, and it gives you the capability for that. There's also a great amount of technology being developed on weapons detection. It's one thing if a person pulls out a gun and is showing the gun, but we've been seeing some technologies today that we've been able to get access to take a look at that'll actually be able to identify weapons before they're actually presented and drawn. So it's being able to utilize technologies like that in conjunction with AI. It also is great for the capabilities of being able to identify patterns and recognition. You can submit an incredible amount of data to it, and AI could make that a whole lot simpler and start doing what we call link analysis to be able to show us who potential bad actors might be. So it's pretty exciting stuff coming down. I mean, I guess you got to be a little bit of a geek about it, and that's something that I am, but it's some great technology that's coming down the pipe.
What do you believe is the greatest threat that we're facing as a nation today?
Well, I think we've seen the cyber threats are just going through the roof, and we see that as a major problem. I think it all depends on your area of responsibility. It becomes what's the worst threat. But I think in general, the problem that I think we've been worried about for a number of years, and we continue to be worried about it for a number of years, is that lone wolf, that lone violent extremist that is incredibly difficult to identify, right? If you think back to when you were in high school, you probably ran with 4 or 5 guys that you knew and you were close with, and you were in that group, and everybody knew what kind of was going on. Today we don't have that ability to be able to infiltrate that little group, right? We have an individual who's a loner sitting on his laptop at 2 o'clock in the morning and gets radicalized for whatever reason. And it's not necessarily just religious purposes, right? It could be anything. They wind up becoming problematic. They can go online. They can learn how to make devices, right? And how to create havoc. And then they go out and they do it. And I think the Park Avenue shooting was a good example of that, where there's really no way to be able to stop that from occurring unless people start reporting stuff and you have other plans in place to try and get early warning systems. And to be able to identify it. But I think that's our greatest threat is you have the ability to go online, learn how to make a bomb, go out and deploy it, and you can do this, in the privacy of your own home. And I think that the greatest devastation can come from that.
What security policies do you believe have been most successful over the last nearly 2.5 decades?
Yeah, I think with respect to the policies, I think the biggest improvement. Well, going back to from 9/11, coming forward, the Safety Act that was instituted by Homeland Security, having the ability to promote new and emerging technologies coming out, and being able to identify, okay, where were the liabilities? Up until that time, you had an issue where companies were a little hesitant because technology that they would deploy, they would be sued for, in the event that it didn't work or didn't stop an attack from occurring. So Safety Act came out and basically provided protections for the developers of it. And also it provided protections for the people that were deploying the technology, the end user. Regardless of, the sides of, what the liability protections were, what it did do was to promote a great growth in the form of technology. So I think the Safety Act designations gave us sort of a baseline as to what needed to be done, and to ensure that the material that was coming out, the technologies being deployed, were actually legitimate and were being vetted. Something that didn't happen post the '93 bombing.
We'll finish this conversation after the break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Power and Politics. We've been talking with 9/11 advocates and experts this week as we reflect on the 24 years since the terrorist attacks on Lower Manhattan, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. We've been speaking with security consulting firm PCC Secure President Sal Lifrieri. Sal, what role do everyday people play in being aware and reporting the threats that they see or hear?
I think it's incredibly critical that the public has a, if for nothing else, for self-preservation, for their own security, to be able to, if they see something, report it. We see this with workplace violence issues, right? Active shooter situations. If you look at every situation, at the end of it, there were always telltale signs. There were these red flags that people saw and never said anything. And that's problematic, right? You want people to be able to get in front of it. We actually, again, we created a program called the TAG program, a threat assessment group, where we actually do that, go into companies, form steering committees, and teach them how to monitor and how to recognize threats or potential threats or things that can become threats. And then monitor along the way, and the whole program is detailed out to prevent workplace violence. And the key part of that program is specifically being able to have employees report, or people in the community report things to the companies and to each other. And ultimately that follows that just follows a natural progression. Once you get the report of that, then it goes to law enforcement and further action is determined and then ultimately taken.
Is there anything else as it pertains to security that you wanted to share?
We think about the sadness of it and the tragedy of the event, but at some point you're looking at what's good, right? What did come out of it that became a positive. If anything was to go on. So the legacy of 9/11, I think, is positive when it comes to technologies and trainings and public awareness. And while the job has gotten incredibly much more difficult, the fact of the matter is, a lot of good has come from it. And we got a long way to go, but I think we're taking steps in the right direction.
Thank you again for the time. Once again, I'm Jonathan Gordon, and this is Power and Politics on News 12.